Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains. Welcome to Epic Realms. Today's guest is a songwriter, radio host, actor, voice actor, the list goes on and on. Probably most well known for being the voice of Scooby-Doo, Shaggy, Scrappy, and many others. Please welcome the one and only Scott Ennis to Epic Realms. How are you doing?
Why? Hey, what's going on? Creeper, please. I'm trying to do it. Look, see, you know what? Hang on a second. I fight these villains off all the time. See, that's what happens when you sit around and you sign pops of the creeper. He's got to be in on it.
Right? Always gotta
Scooby-Doo,
pop in.
where are you? Oh boy, Scooby-Dooby-Doo with Epic Realms.
You've done so many cool things with your career. It's hard to kind of figure out where everything starts. CMA Air Personality of the Year, Golden Mike Award, radio legend, actor, been in several movies, video games, the voice of many people's childhood memories. Can you put a pin somewhere in your life and goes, this is the moment. This is what really
Wow.
spawned it all.
Well, I'll tell you right now. I started as a young child running American Top 40. I was only 14. I got into radio at 14. They were paying me under the table to work there because of child labor laws. And I started my career running American Top 40. And, even as a young kid going to high school, I was always a class clown. So I was always impersonating people through my, as a young kid. So Scooby and Shaggy, I grew up with those characters, and I watched them all the time. I mimicked them. I relived them at night, trying to go to sleep. I would recreate the day's episodes in my sleep. But really what solidified it for me was I really got an anchoring to be in radio, and which I still am in radio, and I love radio. That's my passion, my love. But I started running American Top 40, and I got so tired of hearing, "Oh, listener writes, dear Casey, moving up 5 notches." This, and I learned how to do Casey's voice to a T. And learning to do that, I was reading one time, and I said, "Oh my gosh, Casey Kasem's the voice of Shaggy. I should have known." And so I was doing a pretty good Shaggy, and my dad came up with an idea. He said, "Well, you got Scooby down pretty good. Maybe you should, you should do Shaggy." I said, "Well, Dad, I'm trying." He said, "Well, why don't you be Casey Kasem first, do that voice, and then go from that voice up a little higher instead of going right into Shaggy." And he was right on. And I pretended, walked around doing the voice of Casey Kasem, and then like kicked it up just a little higher, and then like that's how we got Shaggy. Yeah.
Nice.
So
That's kind of cool. When you first got into radio, you said you were like 14 years old, and I
yeah,
and I can empathize. I worked in a radio station as well. I ran the weather and stuff like that during sports games at a radio station. Obviously not top 40 type stuff, but uh, was it hard being like the kid where people wanting to like just have you do all this extra stuff and
yeah.
all kinds of other things you probably shouldn't be doing, but you're like, dear God, I'm in radio. This is what I want to
Yeah.
do. I'll do whatever.
Well, here's the deal. What actually got me the job is it was KLID. It was 1,000-watt AM radio station in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and they wouldn't hire me just to run American Top 40. They said, "Okay, look, we need a couple of things here. We need a janitor on Sunday nights to clean the station, and we need you to wash the station vehicles. And then if you'll do that, we'll let you run American Top 40 on Sundays." I was like, "I'm in." And so I would do that on Sundays, and while the records would run, right? American Top 40, Top 40. I'm Casey Kasem, on with the countdown. And so we would do that. And I remember the I went on in between the records to do the forecast. I just opened up the mic, went, "Forecast for Poplar Bluff today, blah, blah." Well, the program director was driving down the road, and he calls me up. "Do not talk. You run the records. I mean, unless you do a great Casey Kasem impression, do not talk." And I'm like, "Okay, is that an invitation?" So he's driving down the road. He's driving down the road again a couple of Sundays later, and he hears, "Forecast for Poplar Bluff is going to be partly cloudy with a high of 27. Now on with the countdown." And dude, I went right in there, and he calls me up, and he's just shaking his head, and he's like, "Oh my God, you're relentless, man." And so that's when he started letting me talk. And but yeah, I mean, it's I love radio, and that's I used to keep it was 1,000-watt AM radio station, and you're supposed to sign off when the sun went down.
Yeah.
You would sign, or you would go to low power. And low power was 350 watts, folks. You barely picked it up at the Shell station right down the block. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was 1,000-watt at full power, which, 1,000-watt on AM, depending on the temperature and the atmosphere, you could pick that up 800 miles away. That's just the way AM radio is. Well, I would leave it on full power because I wanted all my buddies to be able to hear it, 4 miles away.
Yeah.
I mean, so that ultimately got me fired.
Oh.
And because I would we actually had a radio station call us in Alabama, Dothan, Alabama. And he says, dude, you're killing me down here. I said, what do you? He goes, I'm also on the frequency 1340 AM, and you're booming into my signal tonight. Are you on high power? Who's asking? I'm like, yeah. So he ended up calling the station the next, day and saying, your jock's leaving it on power. It's costing me a lot of money. Well, they fired me over it.
Oh.
And I went to work at McDonald's, and I just couldn't master the Big Macs, 2 meats, blah, blah. So Charles Lindbergh, who owned the McDonald's, he brought me in. He said, I'm going to do you a favor. He said, I'm going to fire you. I was like, wow, geez. I've lost 2 jobs in the last 2 months. He says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back to that radio station and you ask them how much it would cost for me to underwrite your show at night. I said, well, they just fired me. He goes, trust me, kid, money talks. So I went back and I asked the program director, I said, so Mr. Lindbergh wants to know how much it's going to cost for me to get my job back. And he goes, being kind of cocky, he goes, now keep in mind, this is early 80s.
Yeah.
He said, I don't know, a couple of $1,000 a month.
Wow.
I said, okay, I'll go tell him. Yeah, I'm not going to get hired back. So I go back to the McDonald's, Charles Lindbergh. And I said, he wants $2,000 a month. He goes, done. So he underwrote me getting back into radio. And it was because of that really got me back into radio and catapulted my career. And all these years later, he came up to one of my signings back in my hometown, and he would ride the line, and then he'd get up about 2 or 3 people from getting to me, and he would get out of line and go back and get in line at the end of the line. And he said he was just in awe. He just wanted to keep experiencing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, that's a good feeling, and I owed a lot to him and McDonald's. And it's kind of ironic that I would go on as Scooby and Shaggy and Scrappy and all the characters get to voice a bunch of McDonald's commercials through the years. So
Yeah, that is really
Happy
cool.
Meal toys and whatnot. But
Doing radio and having the radio voice, because a lot of people say, "Uh-oh, who's that?" Looks like a.
Oh God! Who's Mike? Who's there? It's Shaggy, please. Thank you.
For those that are listening to the podcast, there's a little Shaggy that just kind of peeked in on the bottom of the screen there. So just got to keep an eye out for him. He probably just wants some snacks. That's all.
Yeah, he just wants some Scooby snacks.
A lot of people have said there's different things to having this radio voice. And obviously we talked about Casey Kasem. His is a lot different than other people.
Right.
Whether it's their cadence or their timbre or what it is about it, what to you is something that somebody that's in radio should use for their voice to kind of get out there? What's like a key
I think
thing?
being unique is the most important thing. I just happen to have an announcer type delivery because I'm an impersonator. So when I'm talking to people, I talk in a little bit more of a structured voice. Unless, I'm really relaxed and just laying around the house, and then I get real redneck, But it's funny because when you go to somewhere and you're, in a bank or you're talking to somebody, they're like, dude, you should get into radio. You've got a great radio voice. And it's so fun. I'll play with a lot of people that don't know who I am. I'll go, really? You think so? I mean, my wife says that all the time. I mean, like, check this out and tell me if you like it. Partly cloudy today with a high of 74. Now on with the, and they're like, dude, you can do that. And I said, I'm going to tell my wife that, because she thinks I should get into radio. And then you'll have somebody walk up and go, dude, do you know who you're talking to? And so they're like, no, So that's funny. But yeah, it's just, be yourself. I tell people, Casey Kasem, he was just himself. What built up his time spent listening, that's a radio term where you got to keep the audience through the break.
Mm-hmm.
He came up with an idea, and he had some trivia that he had thrown in the trash. And he tells the story. that the program director had him in a meeting before his show, and he goes, "Dude, you're losing the audience. You're going into a break, and they're going. We got to keep them." So he said he bent down in the trash can before he went to a break, and he was coming up on the break, and he said, "Coming up, find out what group started their career off by working at McDonald's and flipping burgers before they hit the top of the charts. Details coming up." And it forced people to go, "Oh God, now I can't leave. I got to hear who
Gotta
this
find out
was."
who it was. Yeah.
And so I've adapted that principle in my show as well, because it's a great analogy. You know, it's a great thing to keep people through that break. And so I do the same thing. You know, it's what star just recently went through a drive-through car wash and forgot to roll up his windows? That is coming up next. You know, so yeah, be yourself, because if you can't be yourself, yeah, you're not really going to go anywhere. People like uniqueness, you know.
Throughout all of your career doing radio, again, radio stuff, there's a daily grind and a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about. Is there something that you think a lot of people take for granted that's, you know, really difficult, or like really part of the grind that you're like, God, I wish I didn't have to do this, but I got to do it?
Look, you know what? Not for me. You know, getting up at I'm recently back in mornings. I went to afternoons for 25 years. But you know, getting up in the morning at 4:20 is always a challenge, because I don't go to bed till midnight. So, you know, that's a challenge. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, they listen to the radio and they hear a smooth transition through all these comedy bits and all that stuff, but they don't know that we're working ahead on the show. Like, you know, on my show, I got a lot of characters on the show. Okay. A lot of characters that I'm recording current bits with. And while I'm playing a song or two songs and playing a jingle in between them, I'm on the phone recording a bit that's going to air, that's going to
Yeah.
go on the air. And a lot of people don't know that, you know, they're listening to me 30 minutes ago, but they don't know that during that 30 minutes that they listened 30 minutes ago, I was doing the other half of the hour, you know? And that's where radio, because, you know, radio, you only have so much time to produce the whole show. And I produce the show as we go. I keep it as much in real time as I possibly can. But because of, you know, the way radio has evolved, you know, back in the day, you were live. There was no recording. Okay. I mean, you record some phone bits, but you had to like hurry up because you had 3 minutes before that record needed to be hit again. You know what I'm saying? So you'd be in the middle of a bit and you'd go, hold on, I got to do this. You know, classic hits 103.3. Here's you know, the Rolling Stones, da, 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 and then you get back to your bit.
Right.
Now, because of the computer, you can keep that going, you know. Thank God, because it's made a lot better radio for people to be right in the middle of a bit and not stop. You know, you got to
keep doing it. So being in radio, you've met a lot of people, a lot of names, a lot of big names. A lot. And you mentioned to me that you may or may not have charged people money to come to your 50th birthday.
Oh God, yeah. That's you know, ever since I was a kid, I was always teasing people, you know. One of these days when I have my 50th birthday party, I'm gonna throw a party and charge people to get into it. And my buddies would go, if anybody can pull it off, you could. And then here we came up on my 50th birthday party, and I said, dude, I've got to do this. So, you know, over the years, I've made a lot of good friends. And you know, I'm getting ready to turn 57 coming up. So 7 years ago, I threw this 50th birthday party. And we had Mike Reno from Loverboy. We had John Elefante from Kansas. Carry on my wayward son. Then you had John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band singing On the Dark Side and Tender Years from Eddie and the Cruisers. We had Bill Champlin singing all those Chicago songs. And then we had Bobby Kimball from Toto, you know, singing Hold the Line and Down in Africa. And we charged, you know, $50 to get in. And you got all that, and all the money went to charity. But it was funny. Then my son roasted me on the stage. And it was just hilarious. It was a great night. My buddy John Schneider, who I've written a bunch of songs for, John was out in the audience, and he actually came up and sung a song. But you know, Bo Duke, John Schneider. So yes, I did that and pulled that off. And John walked up to me, put his arm around me, and he goes, "Dude, you're the only guy I know that has thrown a 50th birthday party and charged people to get in." Brilliant, brilliant. So And then of course he later did it. He took the MO and started doing it too. So he did all these John's Bose extravaganza, and he would charge people to get in too for charity. But anyway, but yeah, that's what I did. I threw a 50th birthday party with the biggest names in rock and roll and charged people.
You also write music. You mentioned all the people. Tell us about how you kind of branched over into songwriting and like how you got to work with some of these stars. Like I mentioned to you off camera that like that was super cool that I read that you did a song for Kenny Rogers, which was a song I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think I've been writing songs before I did anything. And in fact, one of the first songs I ever wrote that actually got the attention of somebody was Hanna-Barbera. It was called "I Wish I Was a Flintstone." And I wrote that as a kid. I mean, I was 17 years old, and I sent it to Hanna-Barbera, and they loved it. And for about a week, I was on cloud nine. I still have the letter. They were telling me that how much they loved the song, and they wanted to cut it. And then a week went by, and I didn't hear from them, and they had just gone soft on. They decided not to do it. But years later, yeah, like I said, I write and I write and write, and some of it works, some of it doesn't. But over the years, I've in my country radio, I've had the honor of becoming friends with Kenny Rogers and Sammy Kershaw and Shenandoah and all these big people. And I wrote a song. I was the experience of my child being born, Presley, who we named after Elvis. And I was just in the delivery room, and it just came to me, and I actually was in the room watching everything going down, and I got sick. And so they brought me out in the lobby. I said, "Yeah, you need to stay out here." So I did, and while I was out there, the whole movement thing, I got a pen and paper, and started writing down handprints on the wall, and that ended up being Kenny's last charting top 40 hit. Went to number 37, and it was about a father, me experiencing what I went through as with a young child, and the song goes, "The wait turned into hours before you came my way. A smile to fill a daddy's heart on that special day. The moment left me speechless. I didn't know what to say. Then you took your first breath, and that took mine away. Days go by so quickly, summer turns to fall. Seems like only yesterday that you began to crawl. So don't be afraid to take that step. I'll catch you when you fall. I don't mind if you leave behind a few handprints on the wall." So I wrote that, and that went. Then I wrote "The Paper Heart" for Sammy Kershaw. We wrote a story about Leonard Skinner and the time they died right in Gillsburg. The plane went down in Gillsburg, Mississippi, right outside Baton Rouge. They were actually on their way to Baton Rouge in '77 to do a show, and when the plane went down, and so I wrote this whole story sitting where the nose of the plane came to rest. And I called up Shenandoah, my buddy Marty Raven, he's the lead singer. Scotty, we're going to cut that song. And they cut it, and they had Charlie Daniels do a cameo on it. It was huge. And so we did that, and there's just been a lot of them. But yeah, I love to write. A lot of people don't know that about me, but I'm constantly writing. It drives my wife nuts. We're in the car, I'm writing. I wrote 4 songs for John Schneider. I wrote "Every Friday Night," which is the whole story of how, as kids, we grew up watching, the Dukes of Hazzard on Friday nights, on CBS, and then ABC, and the Incredible Hulk and all that. Remember that on Friday night? It was
Yeah.
Incredible Hulk,
Yeah.
and then it was the Dukes of Hazzard, and but those were good times, and but yes, I love writing songs, and I'll continue. I've written 20 songs for Hanna-Barbera for Scooby-Doo songs that have been on the DVD extras. Um, but yeah, that's my story there.
So how did you branch into doing? How did you get your foot in the door for doing Hanna Barbera? Because was Scooby was like your first voice role, right? essentially, or did you have other stuff before that?
Here's how that went down. A lot of people ask me that. How did you officially get the part? So, being in radio, okay, I was good friends with Don Messick, who did the original voice of Scooby. One of my dear friends, the
Mhm.
legend, Don Messick. And during the early Hanna-Barbera days, it was Don Messick and Dawes Butler. And then Mel Blanc, who was doing mostly Warner Brothers stuff, but he did some Hanna-Barbera. He was Barney Rubble on the Flintstones. And I had my afternoon show, ironically, which is called Cartoons. And I did a parody to the Alabama, the country group had a song at the time called Shaggin' on the Boulevard. And I called it Shaggy on the Boulevard. And a listener kept calling me and saying, you should call Hanna-Barbera and tell them they need to listen to this song. And I'm thinking to myself, because I'm playing it on my show and it's getting a lot of requests. Last thing I wanted to do was have Hanna-Barbera send me a cease and desist.
Right, right.
So I let it play out. About a month later, and this guy kept calling, relentless. So I figured, you know what? It's ran its course. I'm going to call Hanna-Barbera. So I called out there, and I didn't know who to ask for, but they put me through the music department, Bodie Chandler. And Bodie goes, wow. I played it down the line. He goes, do they know you do the Scooby voice that good down here? I said, no, that's why I'm calling. He says, I'm going to have Colette Sunderman. She's the casting director. He says, we're casting for a new Scooby, right? And I said, what happened to Don? And they said, well, Don had a stroke.
Yeah.
And he's no longer doing the voice. He's not good. And I said, wow, I did not know that. So they said, but we'll have Colette call you. So Colette calls me and she's like, short and let me hear it. So I did. And she's like, okay. I'm going to call you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Time. I need you to be there. Okay. So I went through a series of about a week and a half auditions. And lo and behold, I did not know this until later, but it got down to me and Dave Coulier from Full House.
Oh, wow.
Uncle Joey cut it out.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this later. Dave Coulier wrote the foreword in my book.
Oh, okay.
And it got down to me and him. And they were playing them back and forth, and they just couldn't pick who they wanted. And so Bill Hanna, or maybe it was Joe Barbera, was walking through the hall. And they asked him to pop in, and they said, could we play you two voices here, and you tell us who you think is the next Scooby-Doo? Well, they played it, and I won out. He goes, so that guy's got Don Messick's laugh down to a T. So I got the part. And the next thing I know, I'm flying to LA, and I'm sitting with Adrienne Barbeau. She was on Maude and a lot of stuff. Sitting next to Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker.
Wow.
Mark freaking Hamill.
Yeah.
Okay. It's funny because we were in the middle of recording Zombie Island, which, by the way, shameless plug, 25th anniversary, ladies and gentlemen, September 22nd, the greatest Scooby movie of all time. So we're in the middle of recording this movie, and we're at lunch. We took an hour break for lunch, and I'm getting to know people. Frank Welker, just so many people. And there was a guy over there by the name of Jim Cummings. Okay, I don't know who he is. So I'm over there and I'm getting food at the tray. And he looks over at me and he goes, so you're the new Scooby, huh? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you got big paws to fill. I said, yeah, Don was a dear friend of mine. This is an honor. And he goes, you do any other voices? And I was like, not officially. I do a killer Winnie the Pooh. He says, really? Let me hear it. So I'm like being all cocky, Oh, mother, I got a rumbly in my tumbly. I'm a silly old bear. He goes, wow. Yeah, that's going to really give the guy that does the voice of Pooh a run for the money. I wouldn't do that around him if I were you. And I was like, I know, right? So I go back and I sit down and I'm talking to Frank Welker. And I said, hey, Frank, who's the guy up there? He goes, oh, it's Jim Cummings. I said, yeah, who's Jim Cummings? He goes, Winnie the Pooh. I'm like, yeah. I'm going to open my mouth. Would you please insert my foot for me? So I thought, how can I get out of this? Because this is embarrassing. So I mastered up a plan. And when I went back for seconds, he happened to come up and was getting something too. And I said, "Hey, Jim, did you like that Winnie the Pooh slam?" And he goes, "I was brilliant." He goes, I was funny. That was funny. He goes, "You're going to fit in good here." I was like, oh God, he thought it was a joke. I didn't have the heart to tell him. I didn't know who the heck he was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, we had some great story. We were right in the middle of filming this thing too after lunch, and I'm walking the halls of Hanna-Barbera. I'm walking into Iwo Takamoto. He created Scooby. He was the guy that drew the Scooby.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in his office, and he's doing designs for me of Scooby and just throwing these pieces of paper at me, right? I was like, oh, I got to keep those. I'm folding them up, putting them on my locker. And then I walked into Joe Barbera's office, and he's got, I mean, it's freaking Joe Barbera.
Yeah.
Now, you have to understand, Zombie Island, last official recording at the old Hanna-Barbera studios. They had already moved Cartoon Network and Hanna-Barbera over to the Warner Brothers studio lot, okay?
Yeah.
So we were it. It was like a ghost walking through the halls. It was like a ghost town. Yeah, it was very eerie. And some of the lights were flickering. It was ghostly, actually, right? And I went in and I'm sitting there with and you know how you do stuff stupid sometimes you don't realize you're doing it? I'm sitting there with both feet up on Bill Hanna's desk. I kid you not. That's a habit with me, by the way. It's a bad habit. But I'm sitting there and I put both feet up there and I wondered why he kept staring at me a little bit. You know what I mean? But he was very cordial, very nice. He was like, dude, you got Don Messick down to a T. And finally, I get this tap on the shoulder and it's the producer. And he's like, really? We're 15 minutes past. We've been wondering where you went. And I'm like, Mr. Hanna, I got to go. So I walked in there and he goes, you ever do that again? Late, we will fire you. Okay. And I'm like, okay. So that's Hollywood. You know what I mean? You just don't do that. Yeah. I'm learning. And he looks at me and he goes, and you really had your freaking feet on Bill Hanna's desk? And I'm like, oh God, did I? He goes, what do you think you are, a barn? I go, man, I am so sorry. So yeah, that's what you call being young in Hollywood. Okay. Right. So yes, we got that done. And the very next morning, we recorded for 2 days. The very next morning, my buddy Rick Dees asked me to be on his morning show.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I got to get out of there at a certain time because I got to be over to the studios. So I went in and we started having fun, and he was involved me with listeners, and I'm promoting the movie I'm in voicing. I mean, they're getting a lot of PR in LA, right?
Right.
But we're running late. And I get in that cab, and we get stuck in traffic. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So we're 20 minutes past 9 o'clock.
Oh no.
And I'm thinking, I'm done. So we get there, we pull up. And when I tell you, you could drop a pin, there were 12 actors in a circle, right? And they're all just sitting there flipping through their pages a little bit. And I walk in and I grab my headsets and I put them on and I open up the script and the door opens. And right in front of everybody, I'm talking Mark Hamill, Adrian Barbeau, the producer, instead of pulling me out, calls me out in front of all these people. And he goes, you see all these people here? They're professionals. You want to know why they've achieved what they've achieved in their careers? Because they're on freaking time. Do you understand me? If we had any time to kill, I would fire you right now and recast you. Okay? Unfortunately for you, or fortunately for you, we don't have that time. One more time that you're late sitting in this chair. If I were you, I would not even get up to go pee because I may replace you. And I'm just sitting there and Mark Hamill's like, and so the producer turns around, walks out. And Mark Hamill looks over at me and he goes, hey kid, welcome to Hollywood. And I was like, he was trying to lighten the mode, the moment. And he goes, don't let it bother you. He goes, they almost fired me from Star Wars 40 times. He goes, you'll get over it, He goes, but you might want to be on time from now on. You know, I was like, yeah, I think. And I've never been. And listen, I'm usually, because I'm never late. But you know, when you get in LA, if you veer off course, dude, you may be in traffic for an hour. You know,
Yeah, if you don't
I
know.
didn't know that. I didn't know that. So, but other than that, it was a wonderful moment. I did a table read sitting where Don Messick sits, and I had to pinch myself, you know.
Yeah.
And then I went on to doing Shaggy, you know, and the rest of the movies as well. So
Yeah.
and that's another story.
And video games too. How did the video
Dude, I have
games,
done
voicing the video games, how does that differ from animated
well.
shows?
The movies are easy. That's 2 hours. Everybody's reading their lines. When you're doing a video game, you go from 120 pages to 800 pages, and because you have to do every scenario. Most people will never even get to level 50. Okay.
Yeah.
But you still have to do it because there's that one nerd out there that's going to blow the thing up, and it's ponderous. It really is. You go in and you read each line. Okay, so you look at the script and you're like, wow, I've got 2,000 lines, and then the producer's writing you to do each line 3 times, so you get 3 takes.
Yeah.
And sometimes that you do it 12 times. Okay, it's very rough on the voice. And I, as much as I love doing the characters and I love doing the movies, I hated doing the video games. The money was good, but what it did to your vocal cords, I had hot tea coming, man. I was pissing tea. Okay, when I tell you,
Right.
it was, then I had to go because I got too hyped up. I'd have to go to hot water just so I could do these. And but I'll tell you, I was in doing a video game. Well, I was in doing a bumper with a Cartoon Network to promote Zombie Island when it came out.
Okay.
And Billy West had done Shaggy in Zombie Island. I did Scooby, and I kept doing Shaggy, and and they kept who the heck is doing Shaggy? That's Casey Kasem, dude. That's dead. I said, well, that's me. And the guy goes, you've got to be freaking kidding me. He goes, we just spent an hour and a half with Billy West doing the Shaggy lines for Zombie Island. He goes, God, I wish I had known that. We would have had you do the lines, And I said, well, I'll do them for you for nothing. And he goes, are you serious? So they're all talking amongst themselves and they're like, dude, can we do it now? And I looked out in the studio at Jeff, my producer, and he goes, yeah, we got time. So we spent another hour and I knocked all those out. And the producer, again, Colette Sunderman, calls me. She said, pack your bags. We're going to do Witch's Ghost. And I said, well, I'm doing Shaggy now for Cartoon Network. And she's like, you are? She goes, can you overnight that tape to me? So I did. And she played it for Davis Joy, who was the producer of Witch's Ghost. And he goes, well, that's Casey Kasem. She goes, no, that's Scott. And he goes, wow, please inform Scott he'll be doing Shaggy too. Said, yeah. And that's how that went down. That's a true story. And that's how I got the Shaggy. And I've been doing, since then, I have voiced hundreds of video games, talking toys, movies, TV commercials, you name it. And still doing it to this day. I just went in the studio the other day and I voiced talking toys for the new Cracker Barrel convenience, the old Cracker Barrel stores.
Yeah.
All their Christmas and Valentine's talking Scoobies have got my voice on it. There's a new pinball machine that the listeners have got to check out. It's from Spooky Pinball LLC. These pinball machines are not cheap, but they are incredible if you're a Scooby fan. I did all the monsters in that. So I've now done officially 27 of the monsters, the more popular monsters.
Oh, wow.
I recently did a Halifax bank commercial over in London. I did a McDonald's commercial in London. I did the Super Bowl ad that ran a couple of years ago. That was cool for Walmart. Where they're promoting, get the order it online and pick it up. Curbside there.
Yeah.
And the mystery machine pulls in next to the Ghostbuster Ecto 1,
the DeLorean and all those. Yeah.
The door opens and the DeLorean's flying in, and you see this hand come out of the back, and it's like Ruby Snacks, run. And so I did that, and that's pretty impressive too. If somebody asked me what's a highlight of my career, I did a Super Bowl ad. Okay, yeah. That's huge. That's huge.
Awesome.
So
your list of characters you've done, people don't necessarily realize that goes way beyond just Scooby and Shaggy and Scrappy, and you've done Flintstones and Astro. I mean, just
Yogi
Yogi
Bear and
Bear.
Boo-Boo, yeah.
Is there anybody that you wish we had the chance to do a voice for, or anybody you really want to do the voice for?
Yes. Um, I would love at some point in my career to, I'm a Disney fan. I love some of the Disney characters. Um, I love, oh, well, gosh, this here's Goofy. Hey there, Mickey. And then, of course, oh, bother, I got a rumbly in my tumbly. I'm a silly old bear. Oh, would you please help me put my tail back on, please? Or help me reach the honey jar. No matter, Pooh. I would love to help you reach the honey jar. So I do a lot of those for kids. I do I feel I do a Jim Henson Kermit the Frog. I love Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
And I
Who
love Paul
doesn't?
Williams. He wrote one of the most iconic songs, Rainbow Connection. Won a Grammy for it and everything. And Little Enos on the Dukes or on the Smokey and the Bandit. But why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? Kermit, rainbows are visions and only illusions. Singing Miss Piggy, rainbows have nothing to hide. So, those are characters that I adore, Elmo, hello. I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, love to count. So those are some of the characters that, before I kick the bucket, I would love to be able to say that I did a voice for. But the guys that do those voices are just amazing people. They really are.
Right.
I hang with them a lot, and they're just super people. And it would be an honor for me to step into their paws and be able to bring some of those characters to life. But look, the good Lord has blessed me with enough, and if it all ended today, wow, I've lived a childhood dream. It's to be able to say that I've done something that I really, really, really love. I've had three goals, and really 4 if you count the birthday party. So we'll add that in there. Four goals in my life. 1, I want to have a 50th birthday party and actually charge people to get in.
Right.
Okay.
Check.
I want to win a CMA award from the Country Music Association. I don't know how I'm going to win it, whether it's going to be for song or whatever, or for Air Personality of the Year. But I did. I got it. Check. The next night, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island goes nationwide. I'm the voice of Scooby-Doo. And 4, I wrote a song for the #1. I always wanted to write a song for Kenny Rogers.
Yeah.
And I did that. So 4 things, and I've achieved all 4 of them. And so I believe that, dreams are nothing more than reality waiting to happen. You just got to put your foot in the door. They didn't want to hire me at KLID, but I was relentless. I kept putting the foot in the door, and they kept saying no. I put the foot in the door. No. And I said, what is it with you people? What is it going to take for you to hire me? Tell me what you want me to do. Well, we need a janitor. I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay. It's, you just got to be relentless sometimes, And the program director at KLID, Bill Steiger, told me one time, he said, you want to know really the reason I hired you? Because I was tired of seeing you every day. You came to the station every day after school wanting a job, and we wouldn't hire you. They wouldn't hire me for like 4 or 5 months. I mean, and I wouldn't leave. And I actually, on their back doorstep, it was on a weekend, I went up and pitched a tent to make a statement.
Mm-hmm.
And they just came in, and it was funny because Bill Steiger just walked right past me, didn't even acknowledge me. He was trying to show me that he's not going to hire me. Walked right past me, and I just sat out there in that tent. And finally, he hired me. So I tell people, if you want it bad enough, go get it. How bad do you want to win the Super Bowl? Go get it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've been blessed in my career. And if it all day, dude, how many people can say they've done what I've done?
Right.
And so I give credit to the man upstairs because, he's, and my mother, You know, my mother struggled with alcohol and drugs for years, and she loved me to death. I loved her, but some of the stuff I went through as a child molded me into what I am today. It made me resilient and determination, and you know, and that made me. You know, sometimes they say it may break you. Well, I took what broke me and let it make me. So that's kind of the deal there.
Awesome. Do you have any upcoming shows or events or movies? I saw that you might be a ring announcer in a movie, but I don't know how much you can talk about that.
Yeah.
What
Well, I'll
stuff do
let
you
you
have
talk
coming?
about it.
So are you doing? I heard through the grapevine that you're playing a role in the movie The Iron Claw, which is based on the
Yeah.
story of the Von Erichs.
Yep.
So, and I'm a big wrestling fan. People who watch the show, listen to the show. I've had wrestlers on here in the past. I've done wrestling, so they know I'm a big fan. And I saw that, I was like, oh, this is super cool. I gotta see if there's anything about this you can talk about.
Yep. That's you know, what you said.
Okay,
You know, and
sounds
then
good.
you know, and then we got some signings at some Comic Cons coming up. We'd love to see the fans. We're going to be in St. Augustine this weekend, over just south of Jacksonville, Florida. We did that one last year. Great people put it on. They
Okay,
invited us back, and then we're going to go up to Memphis and do Memphis Comic Expo the following weekend. Following weekend after that, we're going to be at Cowtown Comic Con in Fort Worth, Texas. And then we go to Pensacola and we do a big a little con. It's a smaller con, but it's what the folks have put on Pensacola, and Mike and the crew over there. And then we're going to go to Beaumont, Texas, and then San Antonio, Texas, and then we're going to go down and do some filming with the Bellamy brothers. They've called and asked me to be a guest on their show, kind of like what we and do the same thing we've done with your show.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, life's good. I'm not taking anything serious. You know, you can't. You just got to kind of live it each day to day and enjoy the ride. You know, I've learned to
Yeah,
start just stepping back and taking a deep breath and enjoying the footsteps that I've walked so far. You know, and to turn around and look back on the footsteps that I've actually stepped into is pretty wild. I still have to pinch myself, and I'm humbled by it. I love it. I'm just glad to be a small part in such a big franchise that is, in my opinion, and I am a little biased, one of the greatest franchises in the history of cartoons.
yeah,
One of the longest running series in animation history is Scooby-Doo. It's never ever been off the air since 1969. In
crazy.
some form, it's played. And you know, Casey Kasem, love you, rest in peace. Don Messick, one of my dear friends, you know, who did Scooby and so many more. Rest in peace. Mel Blanc, Dawes Butler, some of the greatest voiceover. June Foray, Gene Vanderpyle. The list goes on and on. It's just these people paved the way. They created, you know, they said that the Warner Brothers characters were the greatest babysitters in the history of animation. I said, pay attention, boy. I said, you see that little house over there says DOG? I said, that spells chicken. Go get them, boy. So, but yeah, it's been a ride.
That's awesome. People can find you on social media. You're on TikTok at Scott Innes 1969 1969.
Yep.
Facebook, people can look you up on Facebook, the Scott Innes Radio Show. They can find
Yep.
you right there. And people, you can also listen to that radio show on iHeartRadio Classic Hits 103.3 Baton Rouge.
Yeah, we do that every morning.
How would you say it when you're live? The Classic
Scott
Hits.
Innes, good to have you along. Classic Hits 103.3. It's Innes in the morning. Good to have you along. Put the seatbelts on and hug the babies when you get home.
Hug the babies. I'm gonna have to ask you about that one in the after show Q&A because I that's something that I've heard. That's something that I've heard. Friends and enemies, heroes and villains who are listening. Coming up, we're going to be joined by sci-fi and fantasy author Rhett C. Bruno, author of Titanborn and the entire Children of Titan series, the Black Badge Old West fantasy series, the Buried Goddess saga, Ascendant Wars, and many, many more. That live show is going to be September 25th, and the podcast available the 26th. Not to mention actor and New York Times bestselling author Wesley Chu is going to be joining us. Urban fantasy author Heather Harris is going to be joining us. Co-owner of Monty Cook Games, Shanna Germain, is also going to be joining us. Guys, make sure to push all the buttons. Make sure to follow, subscribe, rate, review. Those ratings and reviews really do help us. They really do help our guests. So thank you so much for being here. And for Scott Innes, I'd like to thank you all for listening to Epic Realms.
Well, I was going to say, as Casey Kasem would say, put your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the shot.